John, thanks for chatting on October 1st, 2021. Today we'll be talking about Joseph Palmer. So can you tell us a little bit about Joseph Palmer? How did you meet him?
Joseph, it was about 1995. I was teaching printmaking courses and drawing at Santa Monica College. And Joseph came up to me in the hallway and said, can I sign up for your class? I've already signed up for the previous one. I said, of course, Joseph. Anyway, it was about 1995, and Joseph was 74 at that age. And Joseph worked his life as an electrical engineer. And he retired when he was 70 and decided he was going to become an artist full time. So he took my class for, he took my etching class once, and he took my printmaking class once. And after that, I had to make him a TA, teacher's assistant, so he could continue to come in, use the facilities and the equipment.
What kinds of changes or improvements did you see him make over time?
Well, one thing Joseph did, he got up at 5 o'clock every morning. And before he did anything, he probably got a cup of tea and sat down at his table and made drawings until maybe 7:30 in the morning every single day. And he used pencils and ink. The way he worked was that he would sit down without thinking and make some, like I use my left hand to get some random marks on a plate or onto a drawing. He did the same thing, but he used his right hand. So he just made some very loose contour marks on a page. From that, he would develop those drawings and search his imagination for imagery. Usually he used figurative animals, fauna, and flora. And it worked perfect with the lino cut and the printmaking because it's mainly a black and white medium, although you can add color to it, and Joseph did add some colors to his work, but his work works well in black and white. Over the years, I think he just developed his aesthetics and his pattern making. And one thing I'll say about Joe is that his work, and I always told him, it reminded me, and he was a Polish Jew. I spent some time in a concentration camp in Siberia. The Russians, or a work camp that was. The Russians put him in a work camp in Siberia, and he also fought with the Allied forces in World War II. And I think it was famous battle in Italy that raged for months and months and months, and he was in that battle. Two things about the war that I know about. Anyway, his work reminds me of Polish cutouts. Very popular, very beautiful design cutouts that the Polish are known for. So his imagery has that same feel. Even though you could tell there's not cutout, it's a lino cut cutting, black and whites, but it reminded me of those cutouts so much. He always denied it. And I said, Joseph, it's probably in your psyche. You just grew up with those, you've seen them all your life, and they just show up.
So what's your favorite work of his then?
Wow, it's so many favorites, but what I can find to talk about is a piece called Family. And it's a very abstract figurative work. Joseph wasn't a realist. He was more of a folk artist. So his imagery had a folk Polish cutout look to it. And so the one I like is the Family because it just always brought warmth to me. And he has a very filled in composition. And it's probably only about 8 inches by 10 inches. But it has the mother and the father and the child in between and coming out of the earth with an array of animals, birds, and flora and fauna and figurative imagery, almost Paleolithic in a sense that it could be something similar to what indigenous people would carve into pictographs or in their illustrations in the caves, almost, but more fluid and with the imagery of I think the Polish cutouts.
So can you describe, Joseph Palmer in the shop? It sounds like you worked with him at Santa Monica College. What kind of energy did he bring to his space?
Joseph came in and he would just get to work. He was prolific. Mm-hmm. Like I said, he would get up at 5, work till 7, come to the school by 9 o'clock, and he'd just pull out those drawings and start carving or marking on his plate what he wanted to cut and carve. And he would be kind of quietly working. Then as a TA, I gave him responsibilities to help some of the other students. So he really took to that. He liked that position where he could talk to the younger students. And they all loved him because he was only about 4'10", with a great smile and a limp. And I always liked it because in the summers he always wore this big safari hat, and it looked like an umbrella on his head. He was so short and small. It was just so big on him. You couldn't miss him coming away. And all the girls loved him. I always call him a chick magnet because he was just like a fuzzy, grandfatherly figure, but with scruples, and knew what he wanted in his art.
So, what are your favorite experiences with Joseph?
Well, I think working with him every day, or 3 days a week, I would see him for 10 years. He was...
so he worked till he was 83?
84.
84. Wow.
And I have an ending story about that. But he loved going out to dinners. He loved going to dinner. One of his favorite things. So just going out to dinner with him, and there were some nice restaurants we used to go to, he loved that. So maybe once every 2 weeks we'd go out to a nice dinner somewhere. He just loved doing that. He also, like I said, he was a chick magnet, so women they saw him and they smiled and wanted a hug from him. He was always working. He was always using his hands. Like I said, he would get up drawing, and he would work until 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and then he'd come home and do his dinner, and then it wouldn't be too long before he would go to bed then, because he was retired and didn't have a huge energy. But I did like it because Joseph, I'm a fisherman. I love going fishing, and I don't like to go fishing with anybody who can't appreciate nature and being out there for 8 hours at a time, on a creek, and not having to talk to each other or say, get tired and say, let's go somewhere else. Joseph wanted to go camping with me all the time, so he was a perfect camping guest. And actually, when he first retired, when he was 70, he was a campground host in California. And so he had bought a van, a camper van. So he loved that, going out there. And so I'd say, Joseph, I'm going to go on a creek and I might not see you for 8 hours. And he would say, that's all right. He says, just get my chair into the edge of the water. And he says, and I'll bring my acrylic paints and I'll paint these rocks all day. And I'd go for 8 hours. I'd come back and he'd just be finishing up painting all these rocks he would pick up in the riverbed and had painted that day with his patterns and colors. And so he was the perfect camping, fishing companion for me. And he always brought that great energy and attracted girls out on the creek. One day.
Is that all you care about, John?
Joe, he was a chick magnet. That's all I can say.
Until he was 84, huh?
Until he passed away.
When did he pass away?
1980, when he was 84.
Wow, so he worked till the year he died.
He worked every day, and I have a story at the very end. One of the experiences of when we were camping was when we were up on a drawbridge coming across the Kern River up in the mountains. And he had his hat on, and I had my fishing pole. We're standing on this kind of a swing bridge, and we're looking down at the swimmers and the people down below fishing. And it was a great location. And actually, we were down below first, and we looked up, and there was a girl with 2 guys, and this girl was like very flirtatious and had these 2 guys carrying her around and carrying her across the river. And she looked down at Joe, and she pointed at Joe. She says, I like him. So we ended up having dinner that night with her, and her two friends and having a good time. And Joe even drank beer that night, and he usually doesn't drink. Well, he kind of gave the world himself. At age 72, when he decided to become a full-time artist and cared nothing else about anything, he kind of gave himself to the world because he had so many exhibitions. He was so prolific with the printmaking that he started having exhibitions when he was about 78 years old.
Wow.
And he was also sponsored by the Polish consulate. And so they put him in some exhibitions, and once he had an exhibition here, they got another exhibition. So about every 3 months, he was having a little exhibition somewhere. And he just loved that. And people loved him. Like I said, he was not just a chick magnet, a guy magnet too. He was just a fun guy to be around. He knew what he liked. He had spent time, like I said, in a work camp and fought for the Allies, and just a great guy. The last story I'm going to talk about it'll explain who he was even better. Was when Joe was about 84, he developed a flappy heart valve, and so his heart would stop; it would flutter a lot, and he would have like a minor stroke or a minor heart attack, or he would pass out or something. So he started calling the emergency room. He lived on the 10th floor of a condo building in Culver City. And so for about 2 months, about once a week, maybe twice a week, he would have an attack. His heart would flutter. And the doctors told him they could do nothing about it at his age. So he was calling the ambulance once or twice a week, and they would take him to the hospital. And once he even fell and broke his leg, but he had no pain. But they would take him to the hospital, and they would keep him overnight, and they would send him back home again. Well, after about 10 times, after about 2 months, he was so embarrassed because he kept using the ambulance service to take him to the hospital, and the doctor would come and see him and say, okay, you can go home tomorrow. That he decided the next time he'd go himself. So he has a heart flutter, and he's hard to breathe and everything. So he decides to call his daughter. Now his daughter lived 20 minutes away. So she comes and grabs him 20 minutes after he has this attack. So she's rushing to get him down to the car and everything. He says, "Don't forget my art supplies," because in the hospital he would wake up and want his drawing every morning. So she went and she ran back upstairs really quick, left him in the car, worried to death. And she went and got his art supplies. He comes down and he says, "You got the wrong ones. Go get the watercolors and the colored pencils." And so she says, "Oh, Dad, he says, "Go get those." Adamant. She goes upstairs, gets his colored pencils, and has got his book and everything. So as she's driving, finally, after about 45 minutes, he's taking him to the hospital, which is about 10 or 15 minutes away. And Joe is sitting there in the passenger seat, and he's drawing, and he's drawing, and he's drawing, and all of a sudden he goes, and that was the end. So he died loving what he does, and passionately.
Wow, that's such a moving story. Wow.
And today I have a whole collection of his work, and there's lots more out there in the world, but I did acquire a nice collection. And it's beautiful work, and each one tells a story.
Well, thank you for sharing Mr. Joseph Palmer with us today. He seems like an unforgettable person, an incredible artist, clearly. So, thank you.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Funny,